What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest here on another Wednesday, the final Wednesday in the month of May? Can you believe it? June is just a few days away. Can you believe that we're getting that much closer to the ending of the first half of 2025? Can we put a pause button on time for a little bit? I mean, that'd be great. But as we all know, if somebody could come up with that concoction, elixir, plan, whatever, they would not be a zillionaire. They would certainly be in the stratosphere of unlike any other with that invention. But we all know that that's not going to be the case. And speaking of time, I'm going to try to, just a quick housekeeping note, going to try to get through this in a rather swift fashion. Got a lot going on, as you can tell. I'm not at my usual sports desk today. I am currently in the same location, just in a different part of the apartment. So therefore, I am presenting to you a different look to the live stream. And Val, thank you so much. I see you like this live, my man. Much appreciated. So for those who are wondering, like, wait, where's Jay Reels? Is he some remote location? Is he somewhere far away from his friendly confines of his apartment? No, I am not, but I just want to rest assured that I will go ahead with this live stream. Again, it may not be the usual hour plus, hour and a half as normal. I do have some topics I want to get into, including what you guys and gals may have planned for the summer, which will be at the back end of this live stream. So let's get right to it. And obviously, you know the drill. For those who tune in each and every week on the live stream, Wednesday at high noon Eastern time. So if you're on the East Coast during the lunch hour, West Coast during breakfast, thank you so much for jumping on board. And even if you're not watching live, if you're watching the replay, please leave a comment, because I look at all the comments that come through. I make sure that I follow up, respond, etc. As Val's the guy that's always sending me messages throughout, maybe not through the live stream, but through a lot of the shorts that I post on my YouTube channel. So please, if you disagree with anything I'm saying, if you agree, if you have a suggestion, a comment, whatever, post it. I'll be sure to follow up. And obviously, for those that are in the chat room, share your thoughts. I'll put them up on screen. This is the whole point of having this live stream, to go back and forth, to unpack whatever it is that I'm discussing or I'm bringing up, because you know I'm always going to have something that may ruffle somebody's feathers or may not be agreeable with some out there. But that's the point of having these live streams, to have the friendly banter back and forth respectfully. And let's jump right to it. So now we have a scenario with both the NBA and NHL, the conference finals, where we're just one step away, literally, when you think about it, from crowning a champion, because in the four series, in the two sports, obviously the two conference finals in the NBA, two in the NHL, all four of them are at 3-1 series leads, which means that a lot of these series could conclude, or all the series, I should say, could conclude by tomorrow night around midnight, which will mean you'll have a week off between the NBA conference finals and the NBA finals, which will start a week from tomorrow. And then with the Stanley Cup, I believe that they start Saturday night, so 2 nights after. So let's get right to it as we break down these series and break down what has gone on here over the last few days. And I'll start off with what happened last night in Indiana, because the Pacers are looking to go to an NBA final for the first time in 25 years. And when you think about it, 25 years was the same time that the Knicks won a conference final, obviously against the Pacers, where the Pacers advanced to play the Lakers and they lost in 6 games, and actually are now on the cusp of closing out the Knicks tomorrow night, which they did so 25 years ago when they won a Game 6 at Madison Square Garden. So this is a Game 5, of course, not a Game 6. But with that being said, Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, just an unbelievable effort, 32 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds, 0 turnovers, a historic performance considering that how many people in the history of the sport have that type of stat line, whether it's postseason in particular, and I believe even overall when it comes to even the regular season. Now, I'd have to go back and check that, but I know postseason, it's Oscar and I believe Nikola Jokic, but with no turnovers. And this is a guy that obviously has had moment after moment after moment, which would also make you believe that the Pacers are playing with destiny. And I talked about that on last week's live stream and even the podcast for that matter, because when you have all these moments, whether it was in the opening round against Milwaukee, down by 7 with 48 seconds to go, and obviously getting the layup to win the game and win the series. Game 2 in the second round against Cleveland, as we all know, they were down by 7 points. Similar scenario, 40-some-odd seconds left. He missed a free throw. He goes back to the three-point stripe, drains a three with literally no time left on the clock, and they go up 2-0 and obviously win that series in 5 games. And then you look at game 1 in this series against the Knicks. I'm sure you've seen the highlight a million times where they came from behind 17 with 6 minutes left, 14 with 2:50 to go, and then obviously down 9 with 50 seconds to go, where he drained a 2-point shot, almost a 3, went into overtime, and then, of course, the Pacers went ahead and won and stole game 1 from the Knicks. And then last night, just a marvelous, a tour de force when it comes to what Halliburton did last night, although he has one more game left to punctuate this round in order for him to advance to get to an NBA final. But there isn't anything else I could say about his effort, about the whole total team, and what they've been able to do throughout the course of this postseason. And now they're just one game away, where tomorrow night at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks are going to be fighting for their lives. Now, part of this theme here with the teams up 3-1, how I'm going to look at it is the scenario, which of these teams could not only extend it to a 6th game, but maybe even get to a 7th game. And I'll start off here with the Knicks. Now, because they have 2 of the final 3 games, if it does play out that way, in their building, this is a good recipe for them. Because unlike OKC in the other conference final, 2 of those 3 games, they have to do it on the road at OKC, which obviously they have not won there so far this postseason. And with the way they played there last night, of course, I'll get to that series next, but at least the Knicks have that advantage. Now, of course, you got to win 1 game before you get to 2 and obviously 3, but just knowing that 2 of those final 3 games are in their building, unlike the Timberwolves, certainly there is a bit of an advantage. But, of course, you can't win 3 games in one shot. So the Knicks have an opportunity tomorrow to at least get back to Indiana with the crowd behind them, and you know they're going to be out in full force, knowing that this could be the last Knicks game that they'll see until October. But with all the celebrities out, and even with all of the just craziness surrounding this team here over the last 2 weeks, but the Knicks have been not a good home team. They've actually been a bad home team here in the postseason. 3-5, obviously 0-2 against the Pacers here in this round. So does it look like they could get out of this game? Well, I would think with the law of averages, they're due to win a home game. And I can see them going out kind of a last hurrah to their fan base to win a game, similar to what the Celtics did in the previous round, knowing that they didn't have Jason Tatum. They were down 3-1, and they had a resounding victory before getting whacked in Game 6 at the Garden. So I could see the Knicks putting out a big effort like that. But as far as anything after that, you think Indiana, let's say if they do go back home for Game 6, you think they want to get on the plane and come back to New York to play Game 7? No matter how game the Knicks are. And you know what? Would I be shocked if the Knicks somehow, some way found a way to get back to MSG for Game 7, which would be Monday night? I have to say I wouldn't, because the Pacers, despite the fact that their playoff resume throughout this round has been fantastic, but they could have that hiccup, just like you saw there in Game 3 the other night against the Knicks, and obviously in the previous round when they got waxed by Cleveland in Game 3. And I understand they won that series and on the verge of winning this one, but who knows? Maybe all of a sudden the Pacers will go into a bit of a tailspin, and next thing you know, on Monday's podcast, of course, Apple, Spotify, jreels.com, obviously on YouTube here, jreels, or at jreels. That's the name that you could follow. If you haven't followed, please subscribe. Do all the checkpoints there if you can. I sincerely appreciate it. But Monday on the podcast, if it just so happens that the Knicks are going to play a Game 7, I tell you, Adam Silver and the powers that be in the NBA will be hoping, praying that that is the case, and they would sign for that in blood right now. But I don't think the Knicks are going to get past the Game 6. I could see them winning tomorrow night. And then Saturday night, which will probably be a party atmosphere, knowing that the Pacers could just polish off the Knicks then and then get ready for a final 5 days later. So I think the Knicks probably tomorrow will win, but after that, they'll be toast. Now, as far as the next series, Oklahoma City, they showed their mettle in Game 4. And similar to what the Pacers did last night, I talked about this on the podcast, it was, of course, on the channel yesterday, where both OKC and Indiana were up 2-1 in their series. But to me, in order for them to make a statement, I needed them to win Game 4. We saw what OKC did there the other night. Obviously, we saw what Indiana did last night. And even though people say, well, Jay Reels, pump the brakes. They were up 2-1. They certainly had the advantage of being home court and had faced no pressure. But when you win that type of game, it does show that you're capable of putting a team away. Now, did they put them away as far as completing the series? Absolutely not. You got to win 4. But just like OKC in the previous round when they were down 2-1 to Denver, and what happened? They won a Game 4. And in this case, even though both Indiana and OKC were up 2-1, but I wanted to see that statement game. I wanted to see them go on the road and win a game just like they did last night or 2 nights ago when they won 128 to 126. A monster game by the reigning MVP and one Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Chip in the 34 points by Jalen Williams, the 23 by Chet Holmgren. And think about this. The Minnesota Timberwolves scored 126 points, lost by 2, and only got 16 points from Anthony Edwards, which is mind-boggling to say the least, and I'm going to get to him in a second. But for OKC, I think this is the team that's going to win it all when it's all said and done. I get it, Indiana with the magic carpet ride and all the magical moments that they've had. But the Thunder have been the best team all year long. 68 wins, as we know. They've shown their toughness and mettle here in this postseason. Obviously, the Denver series that I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, and then now up 2-1 where they put the hammer down. And you think right now that final nail is going to be driven into the T-Wolf coffin tonight as the series shifts back to OKC. So kudos to what they've done and give it up. Congratulations to them winning that type of game, but they can't congratulate them and put the white, blue, and orange confetti streaming down from the rafters just yet because they still have that one more game. But with the T-Wolves, although I think they'll go out with a fight, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. As far as the Timberwolves are concerned, I am just very shocked by Anthony Edwards, and I get it. He came out and said that he felt like he didn't play a bad game because he didn't take enough shots. On top of that, he felt like he played the right way, which is a little bit different coming from him at this stage of the series, because you would think with Edwards putting up big numbers and putting up a lot of shots, we know he's a volume shooter, and give credit to the Oklahoma City defense considering how they double-teamed him. They didn't let him breathe, and I understand that's part of the reason why he didn't take a lot of shots. He only took 2 shots in the first half and had 4 points in Game 4. But with that being said, you're anointed as this superstar, almost face of the league, which I didn't say, but that's a lot of the other people out there, the Stephen A's, who I've gotten at here over the last couple of weeks. But for Edwards, if you're going to be that guy, if you're going to be a guy that is a top 5 player in the sport, a guy that you know could just be ascending by the year and by time goes along, and I don't want to hear about, oh, well, he beat Luka and LeBron in the first round, and last year he beat KD and Kevin and Devin Booker, as well as Nikola Jokic and the defending champs in the second round last year. We could talk about all the series that they've won leading up to the conference finals. But what does that get you? A big fat donut. 0, nothing. Yes. Is it impressive? Okay, fine. But please, you want to have a comparison here? And I'm not trying to make Mark Sanchez out to be Terry Bradshaw or even Mark Sanchez belonging in the same sentence as Anthony Edwards. Of course, Sanchez, he being the USC quarterback drafted by the New York Jets, and in the first 2 years of his career, won 4 road playoff games amongst the likes of Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. So I don't want to hear how this guy, Mark Sanchez, was a guy that beat those quarterbacks, and all of a sudden, not that he was ever anointed the next big up-and-coming quarterback, but it's a thing where just because you beat those type of players along the way doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a top-flight player, a superstar player, or the face of the league. And people could say, well, Jay Reels, that's a bad comparison. But just for the scope of what we're talking about here is just because Anthony Edwards beat legends over the last couple of years in the postseason doesn't necessarily mean that he is a guy that is already one of the top 2 or 3 players in the league. Just like Sanchez beat along the way those aforementioned quarterbacks. Now, he did lose to in the opening round or in the championship game in his rookie year, because he did beat Phillip Rivers and then also beat Peyton Manning in the second year, because it was Manning, then Brady before losing to the Steelers there in 2010. But still, it's just the same scenario. Just because you beat those quarterbacks or just because Anthony Edwards beat those players on those teams doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, he's a top player in the sport. We understand that he is, but as far as that face of the franchise, top 2 or 3, And he certainly didn't show that a couple of nights ago. So I'm not going to look at what he did as, oh, well, yeah, chalk it up to OKC, but at the same time, he needs to perform a little bit better. And even with that being said, people could also look at the standpoint of, well, if you score 35 points and lose, and let's say they lost badly, let's say it was 128 to 110, that still would look bad on Edwards. And you're absolutely right. But at least he found cracks. At least he found ways to get to the basket or try to keep his team in the game. Granted that if you lose by 18, that's bad, where the other night he only took 13 shots and therefore still ended up losing, but only lost by 2. No matter how you slice it, you lose, whether it's by 2, by 13, by 30, or by literally a last-second basket. So to me, I'm not buying that, whether or not if he scored 35 and lost by 18 and gave you a max effort, as opposed to him playing the right way, as he said, and feeling like he didn't do enough to take a lot of shots in order for him to have the burden placed on him. Well, you know what? You can't have it both ways. You got to either go all out and give it your all, despite the fact, all right, again, kudos to OKC in their defense, but we understand that in order for them to win, you're going to need to have monster performances by your star player. And obviously we haven't seen that, and that's not a knock on Edwards. And this is something I talked about yesterday. I had people getting at me with the whole Anthony Edwards, Michael Jordan comparison to some people out there, Stephen A. Smith, and for him to be Jordan-esque, and he's been anything but. And I had people coming at me saying that Jordan's overrated. He played against bum players, this and that. I say to that person, have you even watched Michael Jordan? Are you of the age where you watched his career and not just watch highlights on YouTube if you're 25 years old? So to me, I dismiss that 100%. So that's what you have in that series. Do I think the Wolves are going to push this series to a 7th game? I don't think they're going to get out of this game alive. I could see Edwards being aggressive. I could see them being in the game. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a lead at some point, maybe even going into the second half. But SGA, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Lou Dort, etc., they know that tonight they want to seal the deal. They want to have that week off. They want to be able to rest up and get themselves primed and ready for an NBA Finals. The first time that the Thunder will be in a final since 2012, obviously the days of KD, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, etc. So I don't think the T-Wolves are going to survive after tonight. So that's what I have there with the NBA. Now, as I lace up my skates and take a trip around the ice, 2 more series that are up 3-1 and could conclude by tomorrow night. And last night you had the Oilers in another victory. Although it was close, they had 2 empty netters there late, but Corey Perry, the venerable one who's been on a million Stanley Cup teams, but has not won a Stanley Cup. I mean, you're going to go on down the list of teams that he's played for that he has been the bridesmaid and not the bride. And last night he got a big power play goal, and they scored 1 million power play goals in this series and obviously throughout the playoffs. And they tack on those 2 empty netters there late. And the Oilers now 1 win away from getting back to the Cup final. And for Dallas, this has been a major disappointment, especially if you're a one Mikko Rantanen, a guy who's had a big postseason, even in the following series with Winnipeg, but he's now not scored a goal in 7 straight games. The final 3 against Winnipeg, and then now 4 here against the Oilers. So it's a scenario. That's all right, baby. She barks. Yes, I have the puppy in the background, so you may hear her barking. It's all good. But with the Stars, this is the team that has been built to get to a Cup final. And here it is, the 3rd straight year, 2nd year in a row against the Oilers, and now they are on the verge of falling short. Now, this is a team that I would not be surprised. And I think out of all the 4 teams standing that are down 3-1, this is the one team that I think that could get back at least to a Game 7. Can they win it? Of course they can, but I don't think they will. Because Edmonton, they are playing as if they are the best team in the sport. That's even better than the Florida Panthers. I mean, think about this. Edmonton, after losing the first 2 games to the LA Kings in the opening round, they have only lost 2 games. So since that time, they have won, obviously, the 4 against the Kings. They won 4, obviously, in the previous round against Vegas, and then now they've won 3. So they've actually won 11 games. They're 11-2, losing a 1 game in each of the series there against Vegas and Dallas. So they are hot as a pistol. They are a team that right now you would have to really think and consider, because if they do win this next game, they will have the home ice either over Florida or over Carolina, depending if Carolina comes back from that 0-3 deficit. And, of course, they won there the other night, and I'll talk about that game tonight and that series next. But Edmonton, Connor McDavid, you know that the one thing that's missing from his mantle is a Stanley Cup. And last year he came close despite the fact that they were down 0-3. They came all the way back to tie before losing a Game 7 down in Sunrise. But now if they do win tomorrow night in Dallas, they will have the home ice and have an opportunity to see if they can win a cup and avenge from last year, which would kind of be ironic when you think about it, because 2 years ago, Vegas lost to Florida, then came back the next year, beat Edmonton, and now you may have Florida get back against Edmonton, and maybe Edmonton will win with the home ice and obviously with the way they've been playing. So give it up to them. Dallas, do I think they'll win tomorrow night? I could see that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton polishes them off in 5. I would not, but I certainly think that they can win a game 5 before going back to Edmonton, and then the Oilers will win a game number 6 in their building. Stuart Skinner, give it up. He's been phenomenal ever since he's come back into the series after the injury to Calvin Pickard, the backup. And if Edmonton, right now, in my eyes, they're the favorite to win the Cup. People can say, well, Jay Reels, what about the Panthers? They're the defending Cup champs. They're already up against the Hurricanes. But I think Edmonton could be a little bit on a mission because they know they fell this short last year. And now this year, knowing that the home ice is going to have to come through them, or I should say that to win the Stanley Cup is going to have to go through their building, having that advantage. And I just like Edmonton right now. They are the hottest team at the moment. Like I mentioned, 11-2 here in their last 13 games. And we'll see if they're going to close out the Stars there tomorrow night. Although I think Dallas will win. They'll have some pride. But after that, I don't think it's going to go to game 7. Would I be shocked? I can't say I would because Edmonton can have those lapses. We saw game 1 where they were up 3-1 in the third period. Granted, those 3 goals were based on them being undisciplined. A lot of those goals that they came back to take the lead and win were on the power play. So unless they're going to be sloppy and they're going to get some poor goaltending by Skinner, then I can see Dallas coming back in the series. But if they continue to stay on their P's and Q's and play the way that they have, I can see them closing it out in 6 and maybe even winning tomorrow night. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And then in the other series with Carolina, now they saved face. They showed some pride. They had lost 15 straight conference final games before winning there the other night. They won 3-0. They had a 1-0 lead, which they held until they got too late, empty net goals. Now, the Hurricanes, remember, last year against the Rangers in the second round, they were down 0-3 to New York, and then they did win the next 2 games before losing game 6 in their building. And they had, I believe, a 3-1 lead going into the third period, but they gave up 4 goals, and they lost 5-3 in game 6 of the Rangers. Now, similar to the Knicks, 2 of the next 3 games are in their building. So if they get this one tonight, they have to go to Sunrise to steal a game before coming back for a game 7. And mind you, they were down 0-3. And we saw Florida, as I mentioned before, they were up 3-0 to Edmonton last year in the Cup final. And then what happened? Next thing you know, they were sweating bullets, knowing that they didn't want to be on the wrong side of history where they had a potential losing a game 7 in a Stanley Cup final of all scenarios. But they were able to prevail, as you know. And now they're going to try to avert that and go back to Carolina tonight to see if they could dust them off. Now, I don't know about the 3 players that were out due to injury, that being Nico Mikkola, Sam Reinhart, and AJ Greer. I don't know if they're going to be a game-time decision. I don't know if they're going to lace up tonight and play in a game 5. Maybe they're going to rest them for one more game before going back to game 6 if it does fall that way. But I would think that the Panthers will find a way to win tonight, maybe the other night, for whatever the reason, because of their lineup being a little bit short, and them with Carolina knowing that they had to play for their lives and were desperate. Now, the game's in their building, but we already had seen Florida win 2 games in Carolina to start off the series. So does Carolina have a path to get to a game 7? They do, based on those 2 home games. But unless Florida's going to go into the tank here and just have the Hurricanes play their game, Florida, we know, as I've said a million times, whether here on the podcast, they're mirror images, but the Panthers have more game players. And if those players show up, they're going to win the series tonight. If for whatever reason they play sloppy or they're not finishing checks, or they're giving up odd man rushes, then that's going to be a problem to where we may see a game 6 in Sunrise. But I would think that the Panthers will win tonight. They don't want to fool around. It's like, all right, we gave the Hurricanes that game. Kudos, but now let's polish this series, as I've said that a few times here. Let's dust this off and make sure that we get back to Sunrise to have that week off, because we don't want to extend this series any longer and give them the momentum to think that, oh, well, now we got game 4 in our back pockets. Oh, wait a second. Now we have a game 5. Next thing you know, they're going to Sunrise, and it's 2-2 third period, and it's anybody's game. And if obviously Carolina comes out of that game live, then guess what? All the pressure is going to be square on the Panthers to win that series. So I think they'll get out. I'll say tonight, but I don't think it's going to go a game 7. I don't think any of the 4 series will go a game 7, although the likelihood of that happening, I would think Dallas has the best shot. Which, remember, they have 2 of the games in their building too, just like Carolina. Dallas, Knicks, Carolina, and to me, Minnesota. In that order for any of those 4 teams to get to a game 7. That's not to win the series. That's just to get to a game 7. So that's how I rank those teams as we talk about that. All right, now let me move it along here. Baseball real quick. Major League. We're now, what, a third of the way into the season when we take a look at the landscape, and we know that it's not as top-heavy as you think. Now, yes, we know Dodgers, Mets, Phillies, even Cubs for that matter. You want to throw in the Padres a little bit, maybe sprinkle in the Giants, maybe the Diamondbacks. All right, you want to say the Cardinals because they played well? All right, fine. That's a lot of teams there in the National League. The good thing is that you do have a lot of those teams that are quote-unquote still alive. You can't say that in Colorado. I'm sorry, you can't say that in Pittsburgh. In the American League, looks like Baltimore out to sea. The Athletics, they've certainly stumbled, bumbled, and fumbled. And there may be another team that you want to look at, whether it be the Blue Jays, whether it be, I won't say the Red Sox or Rays just yet, but there are teams that certainly are going to be out to sea, but there are still a lot of teams that are in the mix. Now, by the time we get to July 4th, a lot of those teams will be gone. And notice how I didn't mention the Marlins. I didn't mention maybe even to a certain extent the Reds, even with Terry Francona. But baseball right at this very moment, as I said in the baseball preview, top-heavy National League, as we know. American League, wide open, although the Yankees are certainly showing their separation between them, not only in the division where they have a 7-game lead. Now, the Tigers, I'm sure they're going to argue that because they have the best record in the American League, but the Tigers are still that team that, yes, with their pitching and their lineup, is not anything but a murderer's row, but we know that their pitching is great. I'm sure they're going to try to get some reinforcements for that lineup, and even the back of the bullpen, because their closer is not locked down. There's no Marianos, Trevor Hoffmans, or even a guy like, you want to say Edwin Diaz, or any of the other closers that are out there that certainly in this day and age have the stuff to bring it and to deliver. Devin Williams is another one, although he had a rough ninth inning last night, but has pitched a lot better as of late. But the American League, wide open. I understand Yankees, Detroit, top-heavy there. Seattle, don't trust them 100%, although they're in first place. Houston, they're not the same team, despite the fact that they're probably going to hang around. The AL Central, we know, is going to be very competitive between Kansas City, Cleveland, and Minnesota. And, again, you would think the Yankees right now have to be the front runner, even more so than the Tigers, based on them reaching the World Series last year. And the Tigers didn't even get to an LCS. Although, let's see what they do here in the weeks and even a couple of months to come, because 2 months from around this time, you're going to have the trade deadline. So let's see what the hierarchy of the front office there in Detroit, what they're going to do. But baseball at this present moment, although we know the teams that are probably going to battle it out for either divisions or for wild cards, we can kind of even pencil in which teams are going to make it and which teams are going to fall by the wayside. No doubt. But the good thing about this sport, it is a marathon. There's still plenty of baseball to be played, and the Tigers are an example of that, even the Mets to a lesser degree, because the Mets, as we all know, around this time last year, they were close to being 24-35. That was June 2nd, and then we saw their second-half surge to where they went to a Game 6 in the NLCS. And then the Tigers were, 31-11 to conclude their season from August into September. They won a wild card round in Houston and then played in a Game 5 in Cleveland, where they were up 1-0 in the 5th inning before it all imploded. So even though there may be teams that are on the fringe, teams that are kind of hovering around, and it's way too early to talk wild card, but because it's such a long season, and even with the Cardinals, with the way they played recently, remember, they were, I believe, 14-19, and they turned their season around. You mean to tell me that maybe the Reds or the Royals or even the Twins, and we know that they've been obviously playing very well. They had that 13-game winning streak just, 10, 12 days ago. So baseball to me right now, and I see a comment there, I'll get to that in a second. To me, baseball is wide open. And yes, we can talk about Dodgers, we can talk about Mets, we can talk about those teams that we know come October, the likelihood of them being there will be front and center. But as you all know, it is a crapshoot. Last year, notwithstanding, because you had Yankees, Dodgers, the two heavyweights go at it, etc. But just as early as 2 years ago, Dodgers, they won 4 games, got swept by Arizona. Orioles won a division, got swept themselves in the divisional series. And you had teams like that who had a bunch of success. The Braves getting knocked out by the Phillies in the wild card, in the divisional series 2 years in a row. So just because you have a big regular season doesn't mean that you're going to have a red carpet to a World Series. So you got to keep that in mind. Unlike last year where you had the favorites get to the final destination, and of course the Dodgers got to the mountaintop. But baseball is going to be fascinating. And speaking of Yankees Dodgers, you have that this coming weekend, which is obviously the blockbuster series that a lot of people have been waiting for. 3 games, all on not necessarily national TV, because you got Apple TV Friday, you have Fox Saturday, and then ESPN Sunday. Obviously, those two over-the-air networks, one on cable, one on free TV. And then Apple TV obviously got that paywall that you have to deal with. But Yankees-Dodgers, going to be a monster series. Yankees have had a great road trip to start here. 4-1. They did lose that one game in Colorado, but have won 4 straight since, including last night, 3-2. Carlos Rodon, 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, no walks. Phenomenal game. He's 7-3. But I got news for you, Yankee fans. Not to throw cold water on you, but you know Carlos Rodon. He's had a great year, and give it up. But what he does here in April, May, June, and July has to translate in October, because we've seen in October he had a decent one, that World Series. That was hideous. But we know he's going to be judged on that contract and what he does in October. So everybody can be all high and mighty in Yankee land about Carlos Rodon, but we know the back of his baseball card, when the money is on the line and when the stakes are high, he does not deliver. So just keep that in mind. And I understand that's a way down the road, but you got to give it up. He's been great. And the Angels, I know they're going to start to fade here, you would think. And I didn't include them in that whole mix, because that AL West is certainly, I won't go as far as saying it's wide open with all the teams in the division, because you have the Athletics, who right now are floundering. But you do have to think that the Yankees here, going into that series, which they may win 5 in a row, and I'm sure they want to exact some revenge. Regular season obviously doesn't equate to winning a championship, but let's see how that all shakes down, as I'm looking forward to that as a baseball fan to see. And obviously all the memories from last October, Freddie Freeman with the home runs in 4 straight games, including the Game 1 walk-off off of Nestor Cortez and Walker Buehler, and the stupid fans out in right field with Mookie Betts. So all that's going to be dredged up here over the weekend. So baseball fans, I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to that. But that's what I have there with the baseball. I'll talk more about that tomorrow on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, jreels.com, of course, on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, people. I would sincerely appreciate it. Before I get to my next couple of things, and then I'll sign off, number one, my man, Bio, kudos to you. And it's funny because you had back-to-back. And he and I, we've been chatting back and forth here with some of the shorts that I left. And Bio, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Here we are talking Mets-Dodgers, which starts Monday. But come Friday, you have a whole week. It's New York, New York. Yankees invade Chavez Ravine Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the Mets go to Dodger Stadium Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, I know we've been chatting back and forth, Bio, where you're going to go see Mets, Dodgers next week, but are you also planning to attend any of these games over the weekend? I'm sure it's a hot ticket. I'm sure that's one that is going to be super pricey, but I'd be curious to find out your thoughts about the series upcoming, and not only that, if you're going to be able to get in the building over the weekend to see the World Series rematch of last year. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see and read your comments about that. All right, now I saw this yesterday, and it almost made me sick, because we understand that they're the impenetrable one. Just by me saying that word, you already know where I'm going. We know how much they suck all the oxygen out of the room. And I noticed this on ESPN's homepage, and now we have to take one day off because, remember, I saw this yesterday. We are now 99 days till kickoff, and how they had the absolute nerve to come out and say that NFL is almost back, as they say we're 100 days until kickoff, which will be September 4th, Dallas at Philadelphia, to raise the curtain on the new season. How are we almost to the NFL season when we're not even into the month of June? We haven't concluded the NBA and NHL postseasons. We haven't gotten through the golf, which the U.S. Open will be Father's Day weekend. French Open is going on now. No major upsets. I know Daniil Medvedev, I know he lost, and you had Taylor Fritz lose, as well as Emma Navarro. Those have been the big names of note here that have lost their Roland Garros over the course of these first few days in the second Grand Slam tennis tournament of the year. But how can you even say that the NFL is almost back? What, training camp is tomorrow? I mean, this is just an absolute joke, and that's why I'm sick of the NFL, because I can wait till the NFL season begins. Why? Because, like I said, the NFL sucks all the oxygen out of the room when it comes to sports, number one. Number two, summer hasn't even begun officially, so I want to enjoy the warm weather. I want to enjoy outdoors, backyards, barbecues, beaches, pools, etc. I'm not ready for pumpkin lattes and hoodies and boots and all that. And not to say that once September 4th comes that the seasons are going to change automatically, but we can put a pause on the NFL. And rightfully so. We're nowhere near the NFL season. So for ESPN to come out and say that we're back, and I may even post that on my YouTube channel later on, so you'll definitely hear more about that if you continue to keep your eyes on what it is I'm saying about that. And I see a comment there. I'm sure that's you, Bio, so I'll get to that in a second. But that is a farce. For ESPN to come out and say the NFL is almost back, I mean, seriously, can we get to June 1st before we can talk about it being back? And we're still more than 3 months away from the season beginning. So stop. All right, so let me see. Bio, what you got here? I thought about Friday Yankees in person. I have a busy work week, so Mets were. I hear you. You know, I'll be watching. I'll be tuning in to see how those series are going to unfold. And obviously, we'll talk about it Monday on the podcast. We also have a podcast tomorrow. I'll do a little Yankee-Dodger preview on the podcast as well as we get set for the weekend. And who knows if we're even going to have any NBA or NHL playoffs. Because like I said, after tomorrow night, that could be it. We may not have nothing to watch after tomorrow night when it comes to the conference finals. So let's hope that that's not the case. It would be nice to at least see 2 of those series extended to 6 into the weekend. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see on that. All right, and one last thing I want to get to before I bid adieu. I know this is going to be a little bit of an abbreviated, truncated live stream because as you can tell by the background, I'm not in my usual seat, which is quite all right. But obviously, just to be present here with you guys and obviously to be accountable, to show up every week, whether it is for an hour, hour and a half, or for 45 minutes. I appreciate you guys and gals who tune in, that watch, that follow, subscribe, etc. As you well know, I know I say that ad nauseum, but again, I have to acknowledge you because without you guys, there's no me. So there you have it. But the last thing is summer plans. And now that we're past Labor Day weekend and June is on the horizon, what do you guys and gals have planned for the summer? And I understand, Bio, you live in LA, so it's like summer all year long, luckily for you. But anything cooking, anything that you got on the front or even back burner for that matter? As for me, yours truly, of course, as we get out of that, I don't want to say seasonal depression, but I know it's going to be raining here the next few days, just like it did till the end of last week. We've had just not so great weather, and spring has been pretty good. We've had some warm days. We've had days where we'd be outside in shorts and T-shirts, which is great. But it has been a wet spring. It's been seasonable. It's been, mid to upper 60s. You had low 70s. You had some days in the 80s. But now as we get set to turn the calendar, as we approach the end of the first half, unbelievable, 2025, I'm curious to know what you guys and gals have. Well, as far as for me, and when it comes to what it is that I'm doing, obviously we have live streams. I know I've talked about those critique videos, which I'm planning to stock up and get set for the second half of 2025. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. I've also had some other things that I got cooking, which I'm not ready to reveal just yet, but I'll probably reveal in the weeks to come. Maybe I'll give you a little teaser. Maybe if you're in the tri-state area, could I show up somewhere and just do a live event? Maybe. But again, it's all in its embryonic stages. It's very early. I haven't even touched on it with the misses and things of that nature because, again, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this big, or I'm going to do this on a decent scale. This isn't just me showing up at a Starbucks and just trying to do a live stream. And no, not that I'm going to do it at Radio City, but listen, I wish that'd be the case. But I got these things that are always churning in my head to try to get my name out, to try to be more visible, to try to just expand on what it is that I'm doing, not just with the podcast, but with live streams, as well as the critique videos, as well as the lifestyle vlogs that pertain to what it is that I'm doing. It all ties in because obviously this is a 24/7 job. This is all the smoke that I've wanted since I've quit my job to pursue this full time, and obviously trying to make a living, which is not gone off the runway just yet, but again, all of this is part of the big plan and in hopes to generate income and to obviously have a means to do what it is that I love and get paid for it. So that has to be a part of it, people. I mean, I wish I could just do this all day, every day and not have and do it for nothing. As you know, I'm doing it from the love and doing it for free as it is. But there's going to have to come a point where there's going to have to be a stream of income. There's no ifs, ands, buts, maybes about it. But with all that being said, part of my summer plans is doing that. And yes, of course, I want to be able to enjoy stuff with the wife or puppy. There's obviously beach days that lie ahead, and to try to incorporate all that. And I understand that may be separate from, all right, well, Jay Reels, I know you're doing the podcast and all this other stuff, but obviously that has to be put to the forefront too. Just can't be all about this, despite the fact that this is what I do and I love what I do, etc. But we all know that you have to mix business with pleasure at times. And some of my summer plans, although have not been, let's say, mapped out just yet, but certainly will be, and obviously was going to be a part of the vlogs, of my trajectory, of my journey, as I do this independently for you guys and gals, and doing it not only with a lot of credibility, but being also entertaining, informative, knowledgeable, all of it. Because if I didn't have any of those traits or any of those characteristics that comprise a live stream or comprise a podcast or vlogging or whatever, then why am I doing this? You know, because again, I'm going to be as transparent, authentic, etc. That's why I come to you from the start that, yes, this is going to be my usual hour plus type of live stream. I'm trying to make sure with everything that's going on, especially today, that, you know, I have to be available for other people, situations, etc. But with that being said, I'm still here showing up on time for you guys and gals, because I know that I've made this a weekly thing. And barring anything that certainly was going to be an emergency, or certainly anything that I wouldn't be able to do, I would have given you guys and gals a heads up. And I know I got to give a better heads up than the morning of or the night of. I should actually start having a set schedule, whether it be at the beginning of the week, Monday, to say, hey guys, Wednesday, this is what I got. And I also want trying to get guests, which is also I want to get on the live stream so we can interact with the guests. You get to see that, as you saw there in the anniversary podcast there back in early March. So that's another thing that I want to do, because again, I want to heighten, I want to advance, I want to increase the visibility of what it is that I'm doing. And as a one-man operation, as you well know, as I've said a million times, it's tricky because I wear a bunch of hats. I wish I could just be the guy that turns on the camera and the microphone and just let it rip. No, there's a lot of planning behind the scenes. There's a lot of other stuff that you don't see, which I'm also planning to do as far as the vlog goes. And I've done similar vlogs like that in the past. Just go back in the archives. But with all that being said, I know I'm going off in different directions here, but it does tie into what I have planned for the podcast, for yours truly, among other things. So definitely stay tuned for that. Now, let me see what I got here. A couple of comments here. All right, bio, let's see. I'm using parts of my... I hear that, man. That's good. I know you got Disneyland out there. Is there a Universal out there? I'm sure there is, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, obviously in Florida there is. But that's great. And yes, we all know that what you do with your time is what you make of it. And of course, with summer, especially here in the Northeast, we try to cherish it. I get it. Here in the Big Apple, you got people everywhere. It's hot, it's humid, subways. People are cranky. People are at edge or on edge. People are miserable. People are just whatever. And I know that that is a tough field, and it's a minefield that to navigate. But we have to try to do our best to avoid confrontations such as that, or to make sure that we don't get riled up by what other people are doing to try to make our day miserable, whether you're getting cut off on a highway or on a street, or somebody bumps into you on a subway commuting to work, or somebody looks at you funny, or whatever it may be. Yeah, because a lot of that, of course, could certainly tip you off and even set you off to the point where it could bring down your spirits throughout the course of the day. And listen, not every day is going to be coconuts and palm trees, as we know, but we try to do our best. And Lord knows I try. And Lord knows I may even fail more than I succeed. But in the immortal words of Michael Jordan, what is it? I've taken 9,000 shots in my career, 26 for the game winner, and I missed. I've lost over 300 games. And that's why over and over and over I fail. But the reason why is because I succeed. And that's how you got to look at it. You got to look at it that way, that even though you may fail one day or a couple of days or 1 week, but as long as you get up, dust off, and keep going, that's where you succeed. And try not to let anybody get into your mental state, psychological, spiritual, etc. Here I am getting all philosophical right now, but you get the gist. And that's why I asked what's going on with your summers and making sure that, you know, everyday Mets. Hey, all right. That's right. Hopefully we get the sweep of the White Sox. Everyday Mets. I appreciate you joining on. And you must be on your phone, so that's cool. I like that. And Big D, let's see what we got here. I think Tibbs done at the season. You think next will bring him back? Listen, I know that there's going to be a push button topic here in New York. And the only thing I'll say is this. If they go to 7 games, he's coming back. I think he's coming back regardless. They can get blown out tomorrow night at the Garden. He's going to come back. I mean, think about it. They did take another step forward this year. Last year, they made it to a conference semis. This year, they made it to a conference final. Listen, with the way Leon Rose, the GM and president of the Knicks, along with Worldwide West, what they've constructed here over the last couple of years, they built something. And right now, to pull the plug on Thibodeau would be, I think, premature. And I understand there may be a faction of the fan base that could look at Tibbs and say, like, oh, well, he left Karl-Anthony Towns out for 6 minutes there. What was it, game 2? Where he didn't have him in the game. He had Mitchell Robinson pretty much hung out to dry, although he wanted that defense on the floor. And when you have he and Josh Hart, those are 2 guys that obviously aren't scorers or are able to put the ball in the basket on a consistent basis. So therefore, it's like you're playing 3 against 5. But I think Thibodeau will come back. I mean, I'd be really surprised. They can get blown up by 50 tomorrow. And I don't think they're going to let him go. And again, they've taken another step. So for me, I think he deserves to come back. I don't know what his contract status is. I'm sure didn't he sign an extension after last year, if I'm not mistaken. But I think he's safe. I think he's fine. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Big D? Do you feel like Tibbs should be gone? Do you feel like he needs to come back? I'll be curious to hear what you have to say about that. And Val, what is it, June 29th? All right, June 29th, that's Sunday. So, yes, I'll make sure to shout you out come June 29th. And that's a good time to have a birthday right there, smack before the 4th of July week. And I know you're in the Bay Area, so weather's always nice up there, although it can get a little cool at night, et cetera, but still. And everyday Mets, sweet, sweet baby. I know it's the White Sox, but that's the team that's in front of you. We got the Rockies coming in, so who knows if they could sweep the White Sox here and then go ahead and sweep the Rockies, going to LA to play the Dodgers next week. That'll be 8 in a row when you take the 2 games that they won in the back end of the series against the Dodgers. That would be pretty impressive. I understand you're beating up on the dregs of the sport. Those are actually the 2 worst teams in the sport record-wise. But, hey, you only play the teams that are in front of you, and right now it's White Sox and the Rockies after a day off tomorrow. So that's what you have there. And, you went to Universal on Monday. Nice. I must have skipped that. My apologies there, Bio. That's cool. So, obviously, you got a lot of that planned for the summer with your daughter. That's great. And I'm sure the weather's going to be hot and typical hazy there out in SoCal. So I'm sure that's going to be a good next few months for you. Now, Big D, I think you should be gone, too rigid with bench play. Well, here's the thing, Big D. They don't really have a deep bench. Now, I mean, are you going to go to the Tyler Koleks of the world? Are you going to go to – listen, I get it. Precious Achiuwa has cobwebs on him, so I think he should have gotten more burn here. But part of the reason why he's playing his guys max minutes is because you're literally playing 6.5 guys. So whether that means Deuce McBride or in a case with Mitchell Robinson, listen, he's gotten a lot out of this team. That you cannot disagree with. And I understand that you could look at the team overall and say, well, geez, we need more help. Or you got your main guys out there playing 42, 44 minutes a game, especially this deep in the postseason. And this is one of the reasons why the Pacers have been the better team, because they have a deeper bench. And they have guys, look at last night, Benedict Mathurin. He's a guy that you didn't even hear from in the first 3 games. And then game 4, he finally has his big moment. He finally has a big game. And the Knicks don't have players like that. It's unfortunate. So I hear you, though. I mean, I understand that you have to be a little bit puzzled, but what can Thibodeau do? And I understand when you get deep into postseasons, even if you have a deep bench, it's pretty much going to be relegated to 7 or 8 players. But it is a luxury to know that if you had an 8th, a 9th, maybe even a 10th player, that you could say, all right, I got to switch it up. Or you know what? Maybe I could get instant offense from this guy. Or, hey, I know I can rely on this guy for defense late in the game. He doesn't have those options. He's got to go with what he's had, with what he's had, and he just hopes that it comes in a win. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I get it. Jalen Brunson has had foul trouble, and we know the type of style of play that he is, always banging, always trying to maneuver in and out of traffic and contact and footwork, etc. He's not a guy that's going to blow you off the dribble. He's not a guy that's going to, break you down. Yes, he could break you down and back to the basket, and that's where his footwork comes in. But yeah, he's not a guy that's 6'7" and could jump through the ceiling. So I do feel you, but he's working with what he has. And I'm not a Knicks fan either, so it's not like I'm breaking out the pom-poms for Coach Tibbs, but, I'm just calling it as I see it. And bio here, pretty funny how in the beginning of the season, we were talking about Mets trying to stay close by, trade deadline. Hey, listen, I've been shocked, and it all has to do with their pitching. Their pitching has been great, and you can only hope that throughout the rest of this regular season, especially into October, that it can translate. We saw that last year. I mean, they did get to an LCS, but they did implode against your Dodgers. They walked the ballpark. They gave up 40-some-odd walks in the 6 games, and you can't do that to a Dodger team or really any team in the postseason. And they were very disciplined. They waited out their pitchers who obviously guys like Jose Quintana and Luis Severino, you got to wait those guys out. You got to let them work, get the pitch count up, and stay away from those pitches that are either up in the zone or down away, because that's where the Phillies were jettisoned in the divisional series because they were fishing at those pitches. They weren't patient where the Dodgers were. And as you saw, the Dodgers went on to win the NLCS. But yeah, you're right. Listen, the Mets, I've been pleasantly surprised by their performance here. And now after they get past this week, now they do play the Dodgers and they go to Colorado after that. So they do have a very good stretch here of games that they could – listen, if they come out of Chavez-Marine split 2-2, I'll take it. Anything less than that, I wouldn't. Listen, if they lose 3 out of 4, you deal with it, and that's it. Sweep, obviously you're not going to sign up for that. And I'm certainly not going to think that they're going to win 3 out of 4, so I'll take a split right off the bat. And obviously next week on the live stream, we'll even get into more of that when it comes to Mets-Dodgers, as they'll have 2 games in the books, and bio, we could go back and forth on that. All right, guys, that is pretty much going to wrap it up. I don't know if you have anything in the comments. If you do, speak now or forever hold your peace, because any last thoughts, I'm going to throw that in there. As I said 8,000 times, one more time, please subscribe, like, leave a comment on YouTube. Of course, it goes without saying how much I appreciate and how much I'm grateful for those who join in each and every week. Good to see Everyday Mets jump on board for the first time. That's a name I haven't seen. Big D, another one too. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We know the live stream, again, every Wednesday, high noon, 12 Eastern time. Latest edition of the podcast coming tomorrow, as you see on the scroll there, Apple, Spotify, jreels.com. Thanks to all, as always. And again, if you're watching the replay, leave a comment, etc., because I will certainly follow up with you guys and gals in the process. And with that being said, people, that will conclude another live stream. As always, thank you so much. And whether you do or do not know, in the blood, in the DNA, people, talking sports since birth. As you know, as long as I'm in front of this microphone and camera, I will deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. I do see one more comment. I'll get to that in a minute. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, J-Reels podcast, or in this case, the J-Reels live stream, always comes live, correct, direct, and in full effect. So before I sign off, Everyday Mets, Knicks in 7. I hear you. You got to remain optimistic. And like I said earlier, I would not be surprised if that's the case. Because the Knicks, not to say they're going to have an extra gear, but they may have more grit, toughness, heart come tomorrow night. And who knows, maybe in a Game 6 come Saturday night. That, like I said, if Monday on the podcast, as I sit in front of this camera and microphone, would I be shocked if there's a Game 7 at Madison Square Garden? Absolutely not. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next week on the J-Reels live stream, on the flip, baby.